Here we go. Okay, we are live. So Wilf and Sean, I'm going to just ask you an easy question to start. So what's a day in the studio like for you? Maybe Sean, we'll start with you. Is it a day in the studio or do you work at night?
No, daytime. Yeah. No. Day in the studio usually starts with a very careful, actually, it's not very careful, just a quick overview and planning of what I'm going to do during the day, which is usually preset from the end of the previous day. And I paint all day. That's about it.
And what about you, Wilf?
My day, the only thing I plan is I'm usually in the studio before 6, and I'm on the treadmill for an hour, and after that I have no clue where I'm going. And but the one thing I do have is I'm disciplined and I'm here for the whole day unless I'm distracted by a Zoom meeting or something like that.
So do you always feel like painting? Like what happens if you're having a bad day in the studio?
I love what I do, so it's not it's not work. It's basically it's never going upward all the time. Sometimes it doesn't work out very well, but I love the process of creation or the magic of making art. So sometimes it goes somewhere where you don't want it to go, but I follow what's in front of me.
And what about you, Sean? Do you ever have a bad day in the studio?
Sure. Usually it's just when I end up being distracted or not painting. If I'm in the studio and I'm not painting, I'm usually frustrated. So I don't know which precedes which, I don't know, but usually it's frustration means I don't paint, or if I paint, I get frustrated. But no, if I'm working in the studio, it's fine. Yeah.
That's good. So do any particular lived experiences or memories kind of inform your work, either of you? Or do you rely a lot on research? What do you think, Wilf?
Usually the process, I do take a lot of photographs for my work today or the last several years, but I'm surprised by making art and where it's going to take me. I have no clue what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, although I do have some commissions, but I really love the process of starting a work of art and trying to take it somewhere else, but somehow it always ends up being you. You know, like I try to not try to be somebody else, but I usually try to take it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Sean? Is it more of a lived experience or memories that inform your work, or do you do a lot of research?
If procrastinating and looking at the internet all day is research, yeah, I do a lot of research.
That's research.
No, I don't. I actually don't do research. No. If I research art, I generally look at books. I guess, you know, if I'm looking for a detail on an automobile that I don't have access to personally, if I'm doing a painting of a car, I'll look it up online and do some research. But no, I think I'm sort of far enough along that I don't need to do research. That, you know, paintings, and one painting informs the next, informs the next, informs the next. So I did some research 25, 30 years ago, and then I'm still working off of that.
So in a way, though, your paintings are research themselves, because if they inform one another,
Yeah.
It's sort of an investigation.
Yeah.
So Will talked a little bit about his favorite part of his process, which would be beginning a painting. What's the favorite part of your process?
Yeah, beginnings, endings. What's the movie about that? The middles that are tough. Favorite part of the painting. I'm actually more happy when the painting is getting fleshed out and it's coming closer to a completion when it looks like something. Mm-hmm. I like the anticipation of a new painting, but that usually happens before I'm actually painting. That's usually, working on an idea or a sketch or something. So
I like that. So Wilf, I might ask you, how do you know when a painting is finished?
It's usually it's actually the next day. So let's say if I leave the studio and I feel very good about the work, and I think, wow, this is good work. And then you come back the next day and you look at the painting and you're kind of wondering what were you thinking kind of stuff. So if I come back the next day and it goes wow to me, that's when I feel like it's really done. And if it surprises me, the process is basically a surprise. If it doesn't surprise me, it's not going to surprise anybody. That's how I look at it.
I like that. I like that, the idea that a painting can still surprise you, even, as its creator.
Yeah.
Sean, how do you know when a painting's finished?
It's 4 hours before the art transport truck shows up. Usually, it keeps me from doing too much detail or overworking a painting.
Yeah, I like that response.
I mean that some paintings are like that, but I've been painting long enough that I recognize in myself that I can overwork a painting. So I try to go to the underworked side, and it's usually good enough. And if I put that painting away for a couple of weeks and look at it, it looks more than done. It's hard to judge a painting when you have your face up against it for 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 hours. You lose it's very, very difficult to have a perspective of it, of how somebody else might perceive it. So if you have time, I like to put it away for a while and then have another look at it, and usually it looks done.
So you mentioned the transport truck, and it sort of makes me think, do you ever have a hard time, either of you, letting go of your paintings? Like, is it ever hard to see them out the door, or are you kind of glad to see them off? Wilf, what do you think?
At one time it was a little harder, but now I have no problem with it because I know that I can't hang everything I have. I know that in my collection of art or my own work or whatever. And I think it's pretty cool that somebody would want to live with my work. And so I know that it's a great feeling when it leaves the studio. And to me, if it stays in the studio, I'll keep working on it forever. I know that.
And what about you, Sean?
I concur. The thing that's worse than that, though, is paintings that come back that nobody wants. That really makes me upset. If there's any art dealers out there, don't send me back paintings.
Well, I don't know any of them. So both of you, well, I think at least Wilf, I know you work from photographs. Do you ever think that it's important that you work from good photographs? Or Sean, alternatively, do you work from photographs at all?
Oh yeah, yep. Good photographs, bad photographs. You know, I've tried to do good photography, and in my photographs that I've sort of singled out to print and keep, they're rarely ones I would use for a painting. They often aren't quite altogether there. It's an aspect of photography that I like. I'm often taking reference photos, so I'm not worried about things that are in the way or out of place or something, because if I'm using a photo for a painting, I can always just not include the oddball thing. But then when you review the photos later, the camera captures stuff that you didn't actually notice.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I wasn't looking for a painting, but are there in a photograph, and I quite like them as a photograph. So whether that's good photography or not, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I use photographs for reference, a lot of detail reference. So I'm not too hung up on photography.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me. Wilf, what about you? I know you sent me some photos of yours of Winnipeg back lanes that you took, and I was sort of stunned because your paintings are such transformations of them.
Yes, I learned a long time ago. I love starting with the photograph. I think it's a great starting point for me. I can remember Sandy a long time ago, what she said to me. I showed her this photograph I was working from, and her comment, and it stuck with me, was, well, why are you using a photograph? But because there was some similarity, but quite often not very much.
Mm-hmm.
But the photograph, I love the start and try to take it somewhere else, and it feels like I'm not really controlling it. Like the process is literally magical for me. Like I kind of like, wow, where is this going? And I have no clue. And it changes day by day. And for my own self, I've taken photographs of a work of art, the piece I'm working on, over several days or weeks, and it just keeps changing. It goes back and forth, and there's no set method in the process. It's just all over the map, actually. And I sometimes golf the same way.
Sean, what about you? Do you think what do you think is lost or what is gained through like this act of translating a photographic reference to a painting?
It's weird now when I take photographs. I mean, I have, last time I counted, about 20 different cameras and about 8 or 9 that I use regularly for different things and different conditions and stuff. But I have a camera with me all the time, but I don't always take photos. And one of the reasons is I'm looking for something that sort of refers to my paintings, something that sort of works for my paintings, and then I'll photograph it, and then I might work from that photograph, maybe not, and then so it changes my paintings, and then that painting, it's sort of like a step that sort of leapfrogs. If photography mimics the painting mimics the photo mimics, it's back and forth. I like, the main thing I like about photography is I use it as a sort of a quick reference point if I see something that might work for me in a painting. And usually it's more of a place mark and a visual cue for me to remember to write some notes down, or perhaps a little sketch based on that. And it often doesn't look like the photograph. So and then I'll, and then I'll work from sketch, and then I'll use details from the photograph, perhaps the sheen of a surface or a reflection or something, to try to tie in a sense of realism into that moment, that sort of look. So it's all over the place.
Just like Wilf and his golfing.
Right. I golfed anyway.
So we'll switch tack a little bit and talk a bit more generally. So do you think it's important to understand the meaning of a work of art? Or what does your art mean to you? Maybe Wilf, will start with you.
Wow.
Hard-hitting questions right now, sorry.
Yeah, I've never thought of wow. I've always loved making stuff, and like when I was a child, I'd watch my dad, and he could make things, and I like the idea of making something from nothing, and just play with it. And I can remember making toys myself, and but just there's such a satisfaction out of making something. And I know my mother, she loved crafts, and she did it her whole life. And she'd follow patterns, but somehow it still became her work. It's still, but she was a hands-on. She liked making stuff, and I like making stuff. Like Sandy would often say, "Well, we need to buy a table," and I would say, "I can make that for you." So I kind of like making stuff.
That makes sense to me. That's a great meaning for your artwork. What about you, Sean? Do you think it's important that people understand what you mean when you make your art, or is there a certain meaning that you take from your art practice?
I don't think that it's important that people understand what a painting means to me. I don't always understand myself. So, there's details and aspects of my paintings that mean a lot to me, but they would never be there for other people because they might be an object or something that has, and it's in a painting and it means something to me. But if I paint a car flying through the air and it was my father's car, nobody knows it's my father's car, so it's not gonna. That doesn't have the same meaning. So I'm actually more. I really like it when people come to me with interpretations of paintings and what they feel about it. That actually interests me more than what I feel about my own paintings.
So I'm interested by that. So do you have any memorable responses to your work, Sean?
Yeah. I've had complaints about the violence of my paintings, and I was always surprised at that because I don't think they're violent. I mean, they're paintings. I guess the ones on panel you could throw at people, but the ones I like the most are actually kids, and it's usually the flaming cars flying through the air. But when 7 or 8-year-old little ones to them, it's kind of neat to see them sort of be thrilled about a painting, a little kid, usually boys, because to me it's like, oh, I've got the foundation of something there if a child can appreciate a painting. But that to me, those are the ones I like the best and I can remember as children.
That makes sense to me, because it's almost like they have not quite an innocence, but their reactions tend to be less guarded than most adults.
Right.
Yeah. Wilf, do you have any memorable reactions to your artwork?
I think sometimes when I do a commission, and it's a very personal commission, it's I get to meet some people and unveil the work, and I'm there for that reaction, and I think it's such a big thrill for me sometimes when it's very emotional, like when it touches somebody so deeply, you realize pretty quickly that what you do can touch other people, and in a different way than you had intended. And so the work, I could feel part of the whole process. I literally, in creating art, I feel like I'm just the holder of a paintbrush, and I follow it, and it goes somewhere much better than I ever intended, because I don't feel like I'm that good at what I do, but somehow if I work hard enough, it'll come out. And like some people say, you're so talented. You're so talented, Sean, or Wilf, or whoever. And I don't feel that talented. I just feel like I have two things going for me. I have a work ethic and faith, and that if I work hard enough, it's going to work out. And that's what I have, I think. And,
that's a great response. It's such humility as well. I know, like, anyone is an artist, it's sometimes hard to accept praise. But I also like what you said about appreciating how your work touches other people. And I sort of wonder, have you ever felt touched by an artwork before? Like, do you have like an artwork that you can think of, or something that you've seen in person by another artist that has really impacted you?
All the time, every day. Whenever I look at other people's art, I'm in awe of other people's art, more than myself. Like I'm not really in awe of my work, by the way. I never feel, I don't think I really feel that it's good enough. Like my work is that good. And I know I was bugging Sean earlier. I'll after a show, I say, well, that work is not that good. What I'm doing today and tomorrow is going to be better. And that's how I really feel. And so I never think what I do is that good. Although what I'm doing right now behind me,
that you can get behind.
I love it. I love what I'm doing right now. So.
I like that idea. What about you, Sean? Have you been influenced by any artwork or even artists in your life before?
Oh yeah. I still do have my smile test. If I walk into an art gallery and I'm looking at an artwork, I'll catch myself with a big grin on my face. That's usually the way I judge art. If I catch myself unaware in a state of appreciation of a painting and have no awareness that I'm actually really appreciating it, I think that's important for me. And then of course, yeah, there's artists that I like too. So there's lots of good stuff out there.
Well,
Sean's a better painter than I am.
It's a mutual appreciation society, I'm sure. So just the last few questions.
You are.
So before we open up to questions from the audience, maybe I'll just ask either of you, what's the best piece of advice you've been given? Or what advice would you give to an emerging artist?
Oh,
I know washing my brushes was a very helpful piece of advice for me.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm. I have brushes that are brushes here that are like 25 years old. They still do a lot of work. Um, there's no specific thing. I remember being told to draw what I see. That's always been something that's important to me. Um, I think in versions of that, just don't get hung up on meanings and stuff, and draw what you see, paint what you see, try to paint something, try to improve, try to change, explore on the canvas. Don't get hung up on one painting. If you come up with an idea on a paint while you're working on a painting, finish that one and then carry that.
Oh, we lost you, Sean. Wilf, do you mind chiming in for a moment?
What was
The question that has been asked is, what advice might you give to an emerging artist, or what's a piece of advice that sort of sticks out at this moment for you?
I've never, like, I was a high school art teacher at one time also, and I don't think in my life of teaching, I've never encouraged anybody to become an artist. That's not part of, like, I would never, I would never want to be responsible for that. But what it sounds kind of goofy probably, but what when I talk to younger, in high school, I would see a lot of students that were very talented, extremely talented, but they didn't have that work ethic. Like, and to me, the artists that I know and respect a lot, it doesn't matter, I'm not talking about just local or Canadian, they have a work ethic, like they want to, they look at their career or whatever, like as an artist, as a job. But it shouldn't feel like work, but it should feel like it's part of your life. And I think all the artists that I respect, they actually have a work ethic, and it's part of their lives, and they live and breathe this stuff every day. And I know I do that every day, and I don't get away from it. And I'm thankful for that. I know it's sometimes hard for relationships that way, but that's how but it's for young artists, it has to be part of their lives, I think. And I try to encourage the work ethic. Mm-hmm. And don't give up, just work hard.
That seems like a very prairie attitude. I like it. On the sort of opposite end, the other end of it, just one final question before we move to the participants. So do you collect art yourself, like other artists? And if you do, sort of what advice would you give for building a collection? Maybe Sean, we'll see if we can get you back.
Am I back?
You are back, great, yeah.
I have a new camera and the battery, I forgot to change the battery out and the battery died on it.
Oh gosh. Well, so, a good thing you have so many of them.
Yeah. Art collecting. Yeah, I used to have some Joe Fafards, and then I had to move, and I sold them to pay for a move, and so there's benefits for that. I have an Ivan Ayre sketch. I have some other, I don't know any, actually, I think I have a small print of Wilf's somewhere. I don't mean it like that. Like, they're all, like, I moved recently, so there's like a huge stack of my paintings and other people's paintings in a closet. I haven't unpacked yet.
I have that same problem working in an art gallery. All of my art's in storage and I live in bare walls.
So, I mean, if I was, I'm not really, it doesn't sound, I'm not in a financial position to buy a lot of art. So I have to be very careful, and it's important to buy art, but you know, you have to work within your financial means. And as far as collecting, yeah, so my advice to collectors is I have purchased art that I really like, and never as an investment. Some of it has come, I've made money on some of it, but I've never gone out of my way to do that. And it's just because I'm too focused on making art to collect than collecting it. It doesn't work well with me. I trade with other artists and that sort of thing. Like, I'll do that occasionally, but I rarely have much to trade. So
some great advice still. Yeah. Collect what you like. Well,
and the thing is, if you see another artist that you really like and it's expensive, then just paint your own version of
it. What about you, Wilf? Are you painting any versions of any artwork for yourself?
Well, I can remember going through university, you're trying to be an impressionist or a cubist or whatever. Like that's what I did when I was going to university. And anyways, collecting. I love collecting art. There's no doubt about it. I've collected a lot of art. I can't hang up all the work that I've collected. And I can remember Otto Rogers was one of my teachers, and the only art he hung in his house was his own work. And in my house, you won't find very much of my work hanging on my wall. It's the way it is. I have a lot of my own work, but it's basically in storage or on the walls in the studio, or here somewhere in the studio. But it's kind of like, you know, if I was a musician, I think I would be listening to other people's music, and that's how I feel about the collection or the work I have on my wall. I walk by, let's say, a Chuck Close print, a nice little print, and I'm in awe. Or if it's a Liechtenstein that's on the wall, I'm in awe. And I think I feel blessed to have some of these pieces on the wall. And it's just such a good feeling to see work by people that these artists that I really admire, and there's something about it that just stimulates me as an artist, and they have their own voices, and it's so special, and so my work doesn't stand up to their work, so that's why I don't hang up my work at home, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it's
but I'm thrilled to have other artists' works on the wall. It just gives me a real good kick. You know, I get a good chuckle.
Well, thank you both for testifying for the value of art and art collecting and sharing a bit about your process. I'm going to open it up now to some questions from the audience. So if you have a question and you'd like to share it, you can either type it in the chat or you can raise your hand. I see Carol Ann, I'll get to you in a moment. If you don't know how to raise your hand, just DM me. You just have to click in the participants box to do that. So the first question we have from Susan is for Wilf. Why do you paint back lanes? Straightforward.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I have no clue, but I can remember when I started painting back alleys. I grew up in Saskatoon, and coming from Saskatoon, and through art school, I was doing abstract work, very abstract. I was going to be a color field painter, or I was going to be the next David Smith sculptor. I was a sculpture major. And then when I came to Regina, I just started playing with puddles and back alleys, and I did not show anybody. I didn't want to show anybody what I was doing, and I kept doing it and doing it, and it actually felt right. Like it just, this subject matter that's not normally used, I would never think of anybody actually hanging a painting of a back alley on a wall. And I can remember I was invited to somebody's house, and they actually had my painting of a back alley hanging next to a Dorothy Knowles. And I was quite young then, and it blew me away. I'll never forget that moment, that somebody would actually hang a back alley next to a Dorothy Knowles.
Thank you so much. Carol Ann, I'm going to ask you to unmute if you have a question.
How's that? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay, so I have a comment for Wilf, and I have a question for both of them, but the comment first. I happen to have one of his paintings. It is of a backyard or back lane, and I bought it. I had my eye on his work for a long time because his use of light, to me, is hypnotic. I look at one of his paintings and I just get transported. So when I retired, I picked one of his paintings as a gift to myself. And I'm unsure as to whether it is sunrise or sunset. And I make that choice every day in retirement as to what exactly my life is going to be. And as for the back lane, the road less traveled. The front is always clear, the back lane rarely is. And I remember bottoming out my Oldsmobile in our back lane because of the ruts. And it's just very, very symbolic to me. So I thank him for creating that. Now my question. Wilf's answered a bit of it, but I'd like also to hear from Sean, is, are you self-taught? Was there an education stream when you were in that education stream? If indeed you were, did you see yourself being this kind of a painter? I was going to say commercial, but you know what I mean? Selling your art.
Perhaps we'll start with Sean's answer.
I'm not formally trained as an artist. I have a degree in architecture from University of Manitoba, but it was a sort of a traditional program. So they did teach freehand drawing, perspective, and color theory, and that sort of on a very basic level. And the faculty had artists on staff, so I worked a lot with one of the profs there. No, I forgot his name. Sean, what's his name?
Do you mean Ivan Eyre?
Gordon Adaskin.
Oh, there you go. You had it the whole time.
Gordon Adaskin. He was a very kind, gentle person, and he was a very perceptive artist. And I had failed, maybe the only person in the history of architecture to fail freehand drawing class. 2 times, because I didn't show up. And so Gordon told me to just do a painting, do a watercolor once a week, and then we'd sit down and he would critique it. And then that's basically the extent of my artistic training. Well, the neat thing about Gord too is, you know, I'm not the only person. He taught an awful lot of people over the years at University of Manitoba, but he, as a young guy, his brother got him a job at Taliesin West working for Frank Lloyd Wright. And so he used to tell the story about learning how to sketch. They used to go out on Sunday mornings and Mr. Wright would sketch with the students and he would be there sketching with them and stuff. So I always like that story because it's like a laying on of hands. I was taught to draw and paint by somebody who was taught by Frank Lloyd Wright. Anyways, that's
Standing
mine.
on the shoulders of giants. Wilf, do you want to say a little bit about your background education?
Wow. Well, I started my art career basically at grade 2. Where my art teacher sent my work to the exhibition, and I think I won 89 cents. That was my award, and that was the start of my career. So I did take art after school at night from a neighbor, and then I went through high school, I did take art classes at another high school because the high school I went to didn't have art. And then I went to university. And when you graduate from university or from art school or whatever, you do not become an artist, or very seldom do you become an artist and or make a living from making art. So I did get an education degree also. And it was perfect. Like in terms of when you graduate from art school, I think generally you have to kind of almost forget about what you've learned or what you've been taught and try to discover, you know, I can remember when I was graduated from university, or even taking university classes, I used to kind of like poo-poo folk artists, kind of like that's not really art. And I discovered shortly after university that folk artists really have it right. They're playing with stuff, and it's their stuff, and it's their voice. And I think as an artist, it's a lifetime career of I'm still trying to figure out my voice. I don't know where I'm going to go. You know, it's that kind of thing. You know, I sometimes tell people this story about an artist friend went to Moose Jaw and said, you know, Wilf, I saw your painting at the Moose Jaw Art Gallery, and the painting was 20 years old at that time. And this artist friend says, you know, Wilf, that's when you used to do good work. And it taught me a lot, just that comment. And so I keep trying to do better work. And I was still trying to discover my voice.
I love that. I love that it's just this continued search for your voice, you know, working away at it. Sean, there was a question for you in the chat about the influence of movies on your artwork. Would you be able to speak to that? Is that something that happens or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, back to university in architecture, we had to do, you know, the program was very difficult and we had electives. So I always deferred, you know, went to film studies for my electives because I thought it was a sweet deal to the one class a week we got to sit and watch a movie. So yeah, yeah, movies, absolutely. Like I, you know, as an art form, movies have had as much influence on my painting as art has. I've certainly seen more cinema film in the way it's supposed to be seen than I have of art that I appreciate. Almost the majority of art that I really love, I've almost always seen in books and perhaps on the internet now. But so I enjoy the technical aspects of film. I enjoy the narrative film, and I particularly like films that are beautiful, that have an aesthetic quality. So
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Are there any final questions from our audience? You could raise your hand if your video's on. Oh, there's a question from Susan for you, Wilf, and Daria. I saw your hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Hi.
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you, Daria.
I didn't, yeah, I do have actually a question, but mostly a comment for Mr. Perreault. So I was incredibly fortunate to meet you at Maybury Art Gallery in 2016 in the fall. So I just wanted to say that your piece was like, it's the first expensive piece of art that I've ever wanted to own, ever. And I can tell you, like you mentioned about how difficult it is for you sometimes to let go of your work. And I can just say that, okay, in terms of myself, especially being stuck at home now, where sometimes looking at your piece and, you know, in my possession is one of the few things that makes my day.
Thank you.
And I absolutely, like, you know, only second to my dog. If my place was ever on fire, it would be the first thing that I would save. Just your painting and my pooch.
That's awesome.
So that's and then just a question is, you know, after COVID, is there any, like, do you ever have like visitors in your studio? Is anyone ever able to come and see your studio and tour it in person?
Yeah, like during COVID.
No, after.
Yeah,
after.
people. Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people come in to the studio. I try not to encourage it, but if you're ever in Regina, you're definitely welcome. I actually drive into, you know, just to let you know, I do drive into the studio and hide, and nobody knows I'm here, which is kind of fun. Like when Joe Fafard was alive, he'd park in the driveway and call me and say, I know you're in the studio, and I usually am. Anyway.
Oh, that's wonderful. There's one last question before we end up here. A specific question as to why, Wilf, you decided to paint Winnipeg.
Well, when I was having the show that's on right now at Tuxedo Mall at the gallery there, since I was having a show, I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a Winnipeg subject matter, and so I did take lots of photographs in February, and I've been taking photographs of Winnipeg back alleys for over 20 years, and so some of the paintings in that show are photographs from 20 years ago or more, and And I love the alleys in Winnipeg. They're actually, some of them, they're like never ending. Like they're so long, you can't see that far.
Wonderful. Thanks, Wilf. If there are no further questions on that note, I just want to thank both of the artists for being so gracious with their answers and giving us their time. If you have any further questions that we missed today, you can always give me an email. It's elise@mayberryfineart.com. So thank you so much for joining. And on that note, we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.